Now it's time for the most interesting part of this build. Step 21, the steering rack. So you can see that we have these threaded shafts and we have to make 2 of them. And then we've got obviously our connectors. We've got this BC10, which is called a boot stopper, which goes inside the rubber boots. And then you can see this is actual size, how that is to fit. And then once we've done that, we've got some ball connectors that need to attach to the rack part, then attach to here. And you can see we're going to snap those on. And then this is going to go down over top of the bottom to fit that rack over there. And then we have this cover that's going to go on as well with some screws. And we've got anti-wear grease that we need to put on the boot. And then, of course, we've got to grease up the gear and grease up this area so that this rack is able to go back and forth. And you can see here it's showing you where that needs to be to make sure that it is in neutral. So there are all of the parts we need for this. We've got our screws, we've got ball connectors, we've got adjusters, threaded shafts, we've got boot stoppers, and there are our rubber boots, and we need to make sure that they go on the correct way. And then of course there's the other part of our rack steering. So this is going to be very interesting to put together because this is the only Tamiya kit that has a rack and pinion steering system up to this date. So I'll set this all up and we'll put the steering rack together. So as this is a very unique steering system for Tamiya, and like I said, it is the only kit that Tamiya makes that has a rack and pinion steering system, I've not seen one of these before. So I went ahead and built one of the arms first, just so I could determine what's going to be the best way to put this together. So I've kind of figured that out now, so I'll go ahead and show you. So you can see over here, this is a 1-to-1 diagram showing you approximately how this is all going to fit together, and it has to be at 59.3 millimeters. So I have my calipers here set to the 59.3. Well, you can see that we first need to build this piece. So what I have discovered is that if you grab your threaded shaft, we need to get this one on first before it goes into the rubber tubing. So I can grab my shock pliers here and we're going to spin this on as best we can. Make sure that that's level all around. Yes. Okay, let's spin these on. Now I'm not going to go all the way. I just want to get it on as much as I need to, which that feels pretty good. I'll do it a couple more turns here, but I'm happy with that. Because now what we need to do is we need to grab our boot. Now notice that the shaping has this diagonal shape to it, and you can see that if it's going to sit like that, they're showing you having this notch in the metal here, what they call the boot stopper. It's got to go into this piece right here. So if we slide that in, we've got to get that around and push it into the hole, which it will go. There, I can feel it going in there properly now. There we go. So there it is. There is the boot stopper in place. So once you have the connector on, we're going to put this through the boot and get it into the hole on the other side. There we go. And now we need to put the other connector on. Now the difference is this side, I can pull this all the way down and use the shock pliers again to hold this while I spin this on. Make sure that's going in level. Yes. So we're going to spin this all the way on. And we can push that back, because what we definitely need to make sure of is that the whole thing is at the 59.3 millimeters. Now you can see that this is too big still, so we're going to spin this on. And make sure that we're at the 59. Still needs to turn just a little bit more. And I think we're very close. I'll do one more turn here. Yep. And there we go. So it's just tight. You can see it's just fitting in there. So there's our 59.3. So both of these arms now are ready to go at the 59.3 millimeters. But it's very, very interesting design. So the thing is, in putting this together, you want to get this one on first, because notice this side, I can pull this back, grab the shock pliers and turn, but you can't do that this way. There's the boots in the way. So you want to make sure that this one goes on as far as you can, put that one on enough that you can do fine tuning on this side, or be able to turn both connectors like this after the boot has been put together. And then you can guarantee that you can get that 59.3 millimeters. So again, very, very interesting design. So now that those two pieces are complete, we can work on C2. And obviously there's the other part of the rack piece, and that's how it's showing right here. We know that the ball connectors now need to fit onto the back side of this. So if I use the box wrench, we know that that's going to sit there. So I'm going to make sure that's going on relatively level. Yes, so we can, no, not quite. Let's make sure that that's going in as level as possible. Making sure it's going on level. Mostly now, yes. Okay, so we'll get that in all the way. And you can tighten that all the way down. It's going into the hard plastic, so that's fine. So we're going to do the same thing with the other side. And we'll screw that in. Again, I'm just trying to make sure that it's going in relatively level as I'm screwing it in. Yes, that has actually worked out easier than the other one. So we'll screw that down. So there we go. There are our two ball connectors on the bottom of that rack. Now you can see that these are going to need to be snapped onto this rack. So again, now you're going to want to watch this, in that you want to make sure that the boot, you see the curved part? Well, we know that that's got to be facing out. So this is now going to be fitting onto here. And we'll use our pliers to snap that into place. I don't think I'm going to be able to do it by hand, but we can try. No, I'll need the pliers. So let's do this. So there's one in place. Really interesting. And then we're going to do the same thing with the other side. So again, that needs to be facing out. So we'll snap this one into place. And there we go. So those are the two boots, so that it's going to more or less be looking like that. Now, depending on the positioning of this, we can turn those around at any point, but the rack itself looks like that at this point. Now, I think that'll probably end up going over top, but I guess we'll see as we go along. So that part is done. So now we can move to the next part here, where we're going to be attaching it to the chassis. So to install the rack on the chassis, you can see that with this A9 piece, we need to grease up the inside of it. So let's do that. And you can, I'm just going to squeeze some grease into here, and it's going to go all the way around down the other side. And that's because obviously the plastic for the rack is going to be sliding back and forth. So it needs some form of lubrication. Now, it's not showing putting any on the other side. So we're just putting the grease on that side. So I'll put that aside for now. You can see that on the rack itself, so if we grab our chassis, turn it over, you can see that they want all of this greased up. So let's grease up the rack itself, or the gear there. You can see that they want some grease there, probably a bit there. They want it along the top. So we'll do that. Squeeze some on the side there. And a bit more on the top there. Now, I'm not too worried about getting more grease on there, because this is obviously a part that's going to be moving and sliding around. So I just want to make sure it's well lubed. But I'm okay with that. So that's what we've got so far. And then you can see that on the boots themselves, on the where the metal pieces, those boot stoppers that we had, they're showing you using anti-wear grease, which comes in the kit as well. So here is our anti-wear grease. So I'm going to just use this bamboo stick that I've got, and I'm going to put some of this anti-wear grease on the boot all the way around. And same thing on the other side. Now, I'm not going overboard, but I am putting a fair bit on, I suppose. I mean, this is very new to me in terms of the design. And so I'm not too worried about it, and I understand why you'd want anti-wear grease on a rubber boot. So that's good enough for now. So I'll just put that aside for a moment. And then what we'll do is let's get this into place. So you can see that the rubber boots got to go down. You can also see that they're showing right here that the notch needs to be in neutral. Now, we've already put the servo in neutral, so you can see here there is a notch on either side, and you can also see there is a notch in the center. It's a very small one, but you more or less want to level that out with that notch. Now you can see that the way this is done, that the notch itself, if you remember when we were doing checking the servo, it wasn't going to be perfect. So you can see over there it's too far. If I move it over there, it's better. So I'm going to obviously do one side or the other. I will put it to this side because we can do the final adjustments when we use the remote to do the trim. So knowing that we've got this over to where we want, you can see that this is going to fit over top just like that. And what we're going to need to do, and I'll just put that aside and I'm just going to wipe my hands a minute, is we need to make sure that the boots are correct as well. So what you're going to do is, if you remember the shape of that boot, you're going to want to make sure that this part is facing up. So the flatter part is facing down, the curved bit is facing towards the bottom of the chassis, because that'll level up. Because if you turn this around, well, then the arms don't fit properly and they're sticking out. You've got to be able to turn it around so that basically the tapered end is facing away from the chassis, so towards the bottom of the chassis. That levels it out, and so you've got to do that with both sides. So once this is ready to be installed, you've got to remember where we put the anti-wear grease, it needs to slide into both sides so that that part with the metal is going to stay secure on either side of this. So we've got to make sure that that metal is going in on that side. We've got to make sure that the metal is going in on that side as well. There we go. Push it down. And just going to wipe my hands here. You'll notice that now the boots themselves are secure because the metal is underneath this yellow lip. So now we've got full and free movement, but the whole mechanism is now protected from dirt and debris. So that's those metal pieces, those boot collars or boot stoppers are inside of there. So now we can screw this down. So obviously we've got one up here. And I'm just holding everything down for now just to make sure that I'm actually getting the screws in place. And I'm going to go around making sure that they're all going in before I start screwing anything permanently down. And that should be going in. And last screw we've got here, this one here. And we just need to get that all the way around. So now that they're all in, I'm going to screw them all the way down. And these two here. And the last one. And there we go. So there are all 4 screws holding down our rack system. And of course you can see that I can't move this because obviously it's now a rack, so it's not like you can easily steer the car. Like normally once you've put it together, you can always grab the wheels and make sure everything is working. With this being a rack system, there's a lot of pressure on this, so I'm not even going to do any adjustments until we've connected everything, and then we can do the fine tuning. But that is such a cool design, with it all in, you know, your whole steering system inside these boots. Very, very cool. That is so different. So it'll be very curious to see, once we've got everything connected, how this whole rack system is going to work. Very cool. So that means that step 21 is complete. So now we're going to move on to step 22 and attach the rear gearbox.